Hello and welcome to the Caring Kitchen. I'm your host, Dick Foley from Virginia Mason Medical Center in Seattle. We are so excited to bring you this program that was created especially for those living with multiple sclerosis. The show is all about the importance and the value of food and nutrition, and we'll get started today by introducing you to an MS specialist and neurologist from Virginia Mason, Dr. Scott Nielsen.
Well, welcome everybody for coming today on such a beautiful Saturday morning. I wanted to give a little context about what we're doing here. So at the Virginia Mason MS Center, we wanted to initiate a new program that was really centered to patients and focus on their lives outside of the clinic walls. Today's event, the Caring Kitchen, is the first of a series of events that we're planning under this program called Going Places with MS. And in your folder, there's a page that lists this new program that we're starting today. And so if you want to take a look at that, the mission of this program, as I mentioned, is to optimize the quality of life of those with multiple sclerosis. And we're trying to promote things such as physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being to that end. And so today's event, the Caring Kitchen, of course, we're all aware of what we're doing here. And it's to help with the nutrition and food preparation for those with MS. Now, some of the other events that are listed here, the first three we actually have scheduled. The other ones are in the planning phases. And then later on this fall, we will be scheduling a Paint the Town session, which will combine some ceramics and as well as occupational therapy to help with the day-to-day activities with multiple sclerosis. So I'm grateful for all of those who have come today and have volunteered their time. As Dick pointed out, everybody who's on the program is volunteering their time, and without this volunteerism, we could not do something like this. And so I'm very grateful for everybody involved. So anyway, I will leave it at that, and we'll go ahead and get started. But one last thing, when we're done, as Dick mentioned, we will have some time to reflect on you here in the audience, but also we're going to ask that you provide some feedback. So we would love to hear your ideas, what you think went well and what you think could have been better, because we want to keep this going. So please give your input, and we'd greatly appreciate it. So thank you.
Our first featured presenter today is a clinical dietitian here at Virginia Mason. She's also a published author, and her areas of special interest include nutritional counseling and healthy meal planning. She herself was also recently diagnosed with MS, and she has great passion about helping others with this disease achieve their personal health goals by empowering them with the science of nutrition. Here is Stephanie Lamar.
Hi everyone, good morning. Stephanie Lamar, I'm the clinical dietitian at Virginia Mason. And I guess sort of the million-dollar question we all want to know as people being involved with the MS community is there an MS-specific diet that we should all follow? And unfortunately, the short answer to that question is no. There's not a specific MS diet plan that's going to cure our MS symptoms. However, a more thoughtful approach to that question would be that there's an MS diet guideline that we could follow that actually may help improve our MS symptoms. Because we all have a different form of MS, it's hard to give a specific diet plan, but I do have a set of guidelines that I've sort of put together through all the research that may be beneficial. And the reason for that is that there are things like omega-6s and omega-3s that may help to decrease your MS attack or the severity of your attack. And omega-3s have been linked to improving your mood. And fiber can help with problems of constipation, which a lot of MS patients experience. And increasing hydrating fluids can help with bladder issues. So there are specific diet things that I want to discuss today that I do think might be helpful for an overall MS healthy diet, but nothing that will be a magic wand cure, unfortunately. And one of the reasons that we are sort of lacking on the way that nutrition impacts MS is the fact that there's very limited research. So we don't have the science to back up what we claim in the nutritional field. And it's not to say that there aren't diets floating around that are popular and claimed to be cure-alls for MS. I mean, there's the Dr. Swank diet that still seems to be pretty popular, which is, if you're not familiar, the very low-fat, particularly low-saturated fat diets. And then there's Dr. Wall's diet, which has gotten great popularity in the past few years, which promotes a diet free of gluten and free of dairy, lots of vegetables, limited but good fruits, specifically berries and for the antioxidant properties, grass-fed meats, high diet in omega-3s, and all of those things are important. I think all of those diets have very good aspects to them, but overall, I don't think those are safe diets to completely approach as your sole diet. Taking bits and pieces, I think, is a helpful way to do things. I do think that some critical aspects to adapt to your own diet is to create a palette full of brightly colored fruits and vegetables. Make your diet as colorful as possible. Limit your refined sugars, refined carbs, to stay away from the white stuff. And adapt a diet that's really high in fiber and high in hydrating fluids. And hydrating fluids are fluids that are decaffeinated and low in sugar. And those things will hydrate you. So based on all of that, I do think there are some key points to take from the fad diets. And there are good points to adapt overall that can make our diets healthier and help to improve some of our symptoms. And some of those are a reduction of saturated fats in general and a reduction of trans fats. So saturated fats come mostly from animal products. It's found in high-fat dairy products, marbled meats, and then trans fats come mostly from commercially fried foods or high-fat dairy products, packaged snack foods, cookies, those kind of things. Those type of fats tend to increase our overall blood cholesterol levels, okay? And the bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol, is a pro-inflammatory marker in our body. This is the research behind why those fats may be linked to an increase in symptom severity with MS, is the pro-inflammatory state it puts our bodies in. So if we're reducing those fats, the other advice I have is to increase your unsaturated fats, both the monounsaturated and the polyunsaturated. Monounsaturated fats come from avocados and nuts, and then like your olive oils. Polyunsaturated are your omega-3s and your omega-6s. And your omega-3s are the fatty fishes like mackerel and sardines, herring, tuna, salmon, those type of fishes. Also your nuts, your seeds, your seed oils, so flaxseed oil, soybean oil, those are all good and good fats, and those should be incorporated into your diet every day. Those would be really helpful. Eating skinless poultry, eating meats trimmed of their visible fats, that gets rid of those extra saturated fats and those proteins and still incorporates plenty of protein into your diet. Eating a variety of fruits and vegetables. I think being a little bit mindful of the amount of fruit you eat, because fruit has a lot of sugar. So it's not always the healthiest food to choose. I think we should limit fruit to about 2 cups a day, but we should increase our vegetables. Nobody can eat too many vegetables. So I think overall the kind of guideline is to eat 3 to 4 cups of vegetables a day. It's hard to do. If you don't eat it at every meal, that's really difficult to do. But the vegetables and fruits provide the antioxidants that are really helpful for everybody, but particularly people with an autoimmune disease. And it's safer to get those antioxidants through foods like fruits and vegetables than it is to supplement with them. So taking vitamin C and vitamin E can sometimes be dangerous because it revs up our immune system, and our immune system is already revved up in MS. So we don't want to rev it up anymore. The other thing is, if you are eating grains, if you are eating things like gluten or those kind of grains, to stay away from the white refined things. Choose whole grains when you can. So brown rice over white rice, whole grain breads, and one trick to picking out a good bread, because all brown bread is not created equally, right? When you're looking at the ingredient list on the back of the bread label, the very first word should be whole. If it says whole wheat or whole grain, then that's a whole grain product. If it says enriched, if it says anything but whole after the word ingredient, it's not a true whole grain, and it doesn't have as much fiber as a whole grain bread would have. So looking for those little clues and trying to incorporate as many whole grains as you can if you are eating grains. I think the sort of the better recommendation is to eat grains seldomly, not to include them with every meal. Drinking plenty of hydrating beverages, and like I said, those are low caffeinated, low sugar beverages, things like herbal teas, water, sparkling non-caloric water, drinking plenty of those every day, and that can help. Even if you have bladder issues and you're worried about that sort of thing, not drinking enough hydrating beverages can lead to a lack of appetite, urinary tract infections, so making sure you get enough fluids during your day. And then exercise is hugely important. And exercise helps to manage our mood, it helps to stretch our muscles, it can even help build muscle tone. It makes our muscles more flexible, our joints more flexible. So exercise is huge to incorporate daily into your diet, just moving around as much as you can, okay? And then there are some tips I wanted to offer because it's more specific to the event today, that when we're feeling fatigued, like at the end of a workday, if we've just had an attack or in the middle of an attack, those are the times where you would want to eat smaller, more frequent meals, more like good, healthy snacking throughout the day. Don't bother yourself with trying to prepare large meals and beat yourself up if you can't do it. Eat healthy snacks throughout the day because it's easier, it's less effort, right? But it's still a healthier than avoiding food altogether or making huge meals and tiring us out. If you are preparing a meal, it's better to get all your ingredients where you are standing, get everything out beforehand. Maybe drag a bar stool or a taller stool into your kitchen so you don't have to stand the whole time that you're cooking. And use pre-cut, pre-washed fruits and vegetables to save time. On the days you do have more time or you are feeling better, you can prepare foods ahead of time. And that's a lot of what the cooking is about today, preparing food ahead of time and freezing it for later when you're not feeling so good, or making a bigger meal on the weekend that will last for several nights during the week. So that's just a helpful hint for people who work a lot and have children and those sort of things. I want to take questions before we move to the next speaker. And so if you just want to raise your hand or shout out a question, I'm happy to take those for a few minutes. Yeah?
I'm always very careful reading the nutritional content on the breads I get.
Soluble fiber is a fiber that sort of helps regulate your bowels, okay? And the insoluble is the type that sort of acts as a lubricant to prevent plaques from forming. So it aids in heart health, okay? It doesn't so much matter in your breads which one's higher. I think a kind of a rule of thumb is in a piece of bread, in a slice of bread, it's best to get a bread that has at least 3 grams of total fiber, whether it's coming from an insoluble or soluble source. And most fruits and vegetables offer both the soluble and insoluble fibers. Okay, sure. Yeah, I think so, mainly because it's really high in protein. So quinoa is the grain that has the highest protein content, and so I definitely think quinoa is a good grain to incorporate into our diets. Absolutely. Yes?
What do you think of artificial sweeteners?
I don't love artificial sweeteners at all for anybody. I mean, even with a diabetic population, I actually promote counting sugars as part of your carbohydrate count and not really using the artificial stuff. USDA, FDA, and all the testing has not shown that it's harmful to us, but my philosophy and what I've seen from research is that it continues to feed our sweet tooth. It feeds that sweet addiction because it's so much sweeter than regular sugar. And so it continues that craving and that perpetual sort of evil cycle. So I don't really like that artificial sweetener. Yes?
Do you include stevia as a...
No. Stevia is sort of in a class of its own. It's like a new, I mean, not new, but new to most people in the past few years. And it's different than the artificial sweetener because it's derived from a plant. So yeah, I would put that in more of a safer category for sure. My sort of thought about that is if you're going to drink juice, I'd rather you make it and incorporate vegetables in it. But juices in general, they lack the fiber that you would get eating the whole fruit and vegetable. So it actually ends up being a lot of sugar. And when you're drinking sugar without and not having that fiber intact, it raises your blood sugar a lot faster than if you're eating the whole fruit or vegetable. So it's not a horrible choice, and it can be incorporated into a healthy diet, but I've seen a lot of juice diets that end up being really heavy in sugars and low in overall fiber. I don't think that's a good diet to incorporate.
What do you think of V8 juice?
Sort of the same way. I think it's fine, but it's not. I always promote the whole fruit or vegetable over any juice. Yeah, you're losing just a lot of that fiber, and I think the fiber is what is really helpful in those fruits and vegetables, and that's really where we should be getting our carb source. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better than, a fast snack?
I don't think it fills you up for quite as long as, in addition to the fiber piece, and probably because of the fiber piece, it's not filling you up for as long as a fruit or a vegetable will. So a fast snack, there's nothing faster than grabbing an apple, right? Because if you're going to make the juice, that's actually pretty time intensive. But a V8, the other problem with V8 is it's really high in sodium. So unless you're getting the low sodium kind, you're getting tons of sodium in that V8 product. Other questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
Heather Nucifora is a registered and clinical dietitian, a graduate of the Pacific Institute of Culinary Arts. She also trained at the Culinary Institute of America's campuses in both New York and California. Her consulting business focuses on menu and recipe development, small chefing, and private catering. Joining Heather is Maureen Batali. Batali, of course, is a well-known name in food circles, and Maureen herself has been in the restaurant business for 20 years. She currently works in the deli department at PCC Natural Markets, where she helps people with food challenges and restrictions find nutritious and delicious foods. Here are Heather Nucifora and Maureen Batali.
Good morning. I'm Heather Nucifora.
And I'm Maureen Batali.
Both in the food business. I'm a registered dietitian, trained chef. I've been working more in the culinary world than I have in the clinical world, but definitely strong interest in food and nutrition. So I'm going to talk a little bit about healthy pantry today and being organized.
And I am working at PCC Natural Markets, and I'm going to help you maybe navigate the store a little bit more efficiently and tell you about some of the things that Stephanie touched on and where you can find them in the store and some good choices that you can make.
So there's a package of handouts here, and some of it pertains to how you can be organized in the kitchen, talking about pots and pans and knives and organization. I'm only going to touch slightly on that. But I really wanted today perhaps to be the kickstart of more organization in your culinary world. Things to ask yourself. When's the last time I organized my kitchen, my pantry, went through my knives and my silverware and my kitchen gadgets and all of that? All that clutter, all that disorganized clutter actually prevents us from enjoying our time in the kitchen and enjoying cooking and being organized. So try to ask yourself those questions. When's the last time I organized my spice drawer or my spice cabinet? Do I have spices in there that when I open them up, they don't smell like anything anymore? If your spices don't smell like anything, they're not going to change the flavor of your food, so chuck them. Think about pots and pans. Do you own a few good knives? All of these are really important to healthy cooking and making life easier in the kitchen. Some general rules of thumb to create this healthy pantry and this healthy kitchen is to remove things that aren't related to food production out of your kitchen. Remove shoes, dirty laundry, kids' toys, all of these things that have nothing to do with food. Put all the mail and the newspapers and report cards and magazines, move them out of the way. Move them out of the way of food production. Make a junk drawer. Make one drawer in your kitchen for junk. Toss anything that you don't use. If you haven't used it, chuck it. It's just taking up space. All right? In terms of food items, okay, go through your pantry and look at food items. Canned goods, boxed goods, spices, things growing mold in the fridge. When's the last time you cleaned all that stuff out? Okay, open containers and check them out. Flours and pastas and grains, they all contain fat and protein and they go rancid. So if you haven't smelled your boxes of pasta or your open nuts or even some of your oils, if you're not refrigerating them, open up the containers. If they don't smell right, they smell a little off, maybe a little sour, they may have gone rancid, okay? And that does not add to flavor, and it certainly does not add well to taste. So chuck them. Nuts, oils, you can store those things in the refrigerator. They last a lot longer, and it really cuts down on the rancidity. So baking soda, pancake mixes, cereals, these things absorb odors in your cabinet. So if these have been open for a really long time and they start to smell like other things, you want to get rid of those as well. Okay? I'm thinking about my healthy pantry, and I'm thinking, how do I go about starting a healthy meal? I think about the things that I have on hand, and most often it starts with spices. Mo will probably agree with this. I call her Mo, Maureen. Spices in jars. Dried spices are very important to have on hand. Like I said, they should smell like something. If they don't, throw them away, because they're not going to do you any good. But I want to talk about buying spices in bulk, and I wanted to give you a little price comparison down here of jarred herbs and spices. If you're going to buy like a little McCormick or a little Safeway jar, you're paying for the jar and you're paying for the convenience. Okay? There are many other ways to buy spices. Buying spices in bulk is really helpful. Basil leaves, for example, a small jar of basil leaves is about 1.25 ounces, costs $5.11. If you transfer that cost into a pound, it's $65 a pound. If you bought it in bulk, I like to buy my spices at World Spice, but I know that PCC has a huge dried spice collection. You're paying $16 a pound. You do not need a pound of dried spices. An ounce only costs $1. Okay, bay leaves, for example, $82 a pound for bay leaves when you're buying them in the small jars. If you're to buy it in bulk, it's probably going to cost you $1 an ounce. You can restock your pantry with bulk spices, getting everything that you need for about $20 a person.
And in very small amounts.
In very small
so
amounts.
So you don't lose the flavor of the spice. That's the nice thing.
Right. Certain things are not great to buy dried if you don't have to. Parsley is not a great dried spice. Cilantro, not a great dried spice. These things are great fresh. But a lot of your powdered spices, totally fine to buy in dried bulk. The other thing that I like about some of the spice shops and some of the more frequently changed out spices that you can buy in bulk is World Spice Market, for example, will grind your spice essentially to order. The types of jars that I recommend are also in the presentation. Anything that has a rubber gasket, a little rubber lining, is the type of jar you want to use. Sometimes a lot of those metal jars that are just metal on metal, they're very cheap, but they don't seal the jar the way that you want it to. So if you can get some kind of jar either at World Market or some of the bulk grocery stores will have the jars, they're about $1 to $2 a piece, or even use some of your old Safeway jars after you go out and buy bulk spices. Okay, there's a list here of what spices you should really have on hand, and some of them are a little bit more exotic. I don't know what your tastes are, but basil and bay leaves, celery seeds, cinnamon, cloves, fennel seed, garlic powder. These things should smell like what they are. So go into your cabinet, give your cinnamon a sniff, give your fennel a sniff. If it doesn't smell like either of those things, it's time to renew. You're welcome to look over that on your own time, but really what I want to talk about now is the pantry that you open up that has all of your bulk items, your canned items, your dry items, things like that. I'm a huge advocate of having the things that you commonly use on hand. Have them before you need them, okay? So having a good list, knowing what recipes you like, where you shop is really important. In terms of canned goods, I always have canned fruits, canned vegetables, soups and broths on hand, okay? Fruits, look for fruits that are stored in natural juices. I think we're sort of phasing out of the fruits and heavy syrup now. I think we've gotten a lot of that education over time. But really what you want to look for is fruits either that are canned in water or canned in their natural juice, okay? I typically drain most of the juice out of mine, but if it's stored in natural juice, it's okay. Vegetables without added salt. Canned vegetables are loaded with salt usually, and you can remove a good portion of it by just rinsing it and draining it. Soups and broths. I always keep chicken stock on hand. I always keep a vegetable broth on hand as well. The nice thing about these broths is that sometimes it doesn't have to be the liquid Tetra Pak or the large liquid can. A lot of freezer sections now have frozen blocks of concentrated broth. So if you're at a premium for shelf space, having something like that is really helpful. You just sort of scoop out a block of it, you might add a little bit of water, and then you've got stock, and then it goes back in the freezer. You'll see like creamy soup, creamy corn soup, creamy tomato soup. I think those soups are a great basis of a sauce. For example, I like the Pacific Foods creamy cashew carrot. I add that as a sauce to cooked quinoa, chopped cashews. I may or may not add chicken or something or some other protein, and then I garnish it with cilantro. I don't have to be bothered with chicken stock. I don't have to be bothered with any other kind of sauce. I like those soups as a basis of sauce for other things. I make my macaroni and cheese with a creamy garlic soup that Whole Foods makes. That's, instead of cream, I add creamy garlic soup. And it cuts down on the fat content dramatically, and it adds a lot of flavor that you just don't get with plain broth. Tomato products, tomato paste, crushed tomatoes, diced tomatoes. I always have some form of tomato product on hand, okay? Tomato paste, pesto, chopped garlic, they all come in these little tiny metal or plastic tubes that you find. Once you open those up, they stay in the refrigerator for a really long time. And it's great to have those things on hand. I use my tomato paste often. Sun-dried tomatoes, whole-seeded tomatoes, depending on what you use, they're pretty important ingredients for a lot of things that I cook. Black beans, navy beans, kidney beans. We talk about beans all the time now. Beans are like this huge focus of nutrition these days, and a lot of people are intimidated by dried beans. So two things. You can either use canned beans, rinse them, they're ready to eat. They have canned beans of every variety. Sometimes they're seasoned. You can find Cuban beans, you can find Mexican seasoned beans. All you need to do is literally open the can and insert spoon. You could eat it right out of the can if you wanted to. But if you're really into soaking and doing the whole dried bean to fresh bean yourself, you don't have a ton of time. I have done this myself at home. I will soak beans in the refrigerator in cold water, and then if I'm not ready to use them right away, I lay them out on a sheet pan, freeze them, and then put them into a Ziploc bag. So the next time you actually go to use the beans, you've already completed the soaking process, okay? In terms of some of the savory items that add a lot of flavor to things, I always have anchovies on hand. I don't know how many of you like the flavor of anchovies, but a lot of times it just adds a good little bit of savory, salty flavor without adding a lot of fishy taste. I use them a lot. Canned tuna, canned salmon, great sources of protein, really easy if you're using the ready-to-use pouches. I use it in pasta, I use it in salads, I use them in everything. Okay, healthy baking, whole wheat flour, all-purpose flour. A lot of the gluten-free flours are becoming more popular as well. It's good to have a couple of everything on hand. If you're trying to remain gluten-free, you want to look out for that. But I typically have a whole grain flour, like a whole wheat flour, and an all-purpose flour on hand all the time. Flax meal, some of the more natural sweeteners like we talked about, honey, maple syrup. I like grade B maple syrup. I think it adds a lot of flavor, a lot of depth. Real maple syrup. You'll pay the price, you'll pay a little bit more, but it's really great to have on hand. Agave I use for certain things, baking powder, baking soda, dark chocolate. I always have chocolate in my house, always, always, always. Dried fruits and nut butters. I like natural peanut butter. But I also like some of the flax butters or the almond butters as well. My favorite place to shop for some of that is Trader Joe's. I don't know if you've ever purchased nuts or nut butters and things. I like to purchase them there. But oils, I know we talked a lot about oils as well. So olive oil, canola oil, some of the nut oils. You don't want to cook in nut oil, but hazelnut oil, almond oil, they add a lot of flavor to things that aren't being cooked. So if you're making salad dressings or if you're just tossing, some kind of salad or fruit salad or something like that, nut oil is a great addition. And coconut oil. The virgin expressed coconut oil is also gaining in popularity. I enjoy cooking with it. I enjoy baking with it. I love the flavor of coconut. So healthy grains and dry goods. I'm almost done. Nuts and seeds. So I love Trader Joe's for nuts and seeds. I think their prices are great. My nuts, I always keep them in Ziplocs, and I always keep them in the refrigerator. They just go bad so fast if they're sitting out on the counter. Grains, quinoa, bulgur, wheat berries, these are all great additions out of the bulk section. And Mo, I know, is going to talk a lot about that. The bulk section can be intimidating because you're like, I have all these bags sitting on the counter. I don't know how much to get. Pennies on the dollar is what you're paying versus buying it out of a package. So if you can make a little bit of room, maybe buy some containers, Ziplocs and things for those to go in, they're just, the possibilities are endless. Lentils, dried peas, beans, we talked about all of that. So in terms of what I have in my fridge for condiments, the drawer of my refrigerator is, or the side of my refrigerator is loaded with condiments. And it is so irritating to me sometimes when I look at a recipe and I'm like, I should have that, and I don't. So the things that I've listed here are what I think are the most prevalent things in my refrigerator to make cooking a little bit more easy. Soy sauce, have it on hand. It adds a savory flavor. It's pretty important to most Asian cooking. Fish sauce, if you're doing any kind of curry, you like Thai food, you like Vietnamese food, you like Asian food, you're probably going to use fish sauce. Some of these aren't as important. Black bean paste, you don't need to have that. Sweet chili sauce, if you like sweet and sour of any kind, it's cheap and people love it. I always have Dijon mustard on hand, always have capers on hand. Okay, if I'm making any salad dressing from scratch, it typically has mustard in it, the Dijon, so I have it. Vinegar, balsamic, apple cider vinegar, always have them on hand. The broths, the ketchup, relish. I like curry paste. I like it a lot. Curry paste, the refrigerated curry paste will last forever in your refrigerator. So if you like to make curry at home, most often the only thing you have to add to some of those curries is either a little bit of oil or a little bit of coconut milk. So if you like curry at home, it's the easiest thing ever. Just add a bag of frozen vegetables, maybe a little bit of protein, you're good to go. Perishable and fresh pantry items. I always have lemons, limes, and oranges on hand, not only for the juice inside, but for the zest. I'm constantly using the zest of oranges. I'm putting them in my water. I'm putting that in everything. So those things are great to have on hand, and you use almost every part of it. Garlic and onions, great to have fresh. Buttermilk, low-fat milk. Greek yogurt. I put ricotta and cottage cheese here. They're not super important. Greek yogurt I love to have because if you are trying to make anything creamy at home and you want to do so in the lowest fat calorie way possible, you add plain Greek yogurt. It's amazing how much it could taste like sour cream or buttermilk or heavy cream. So if you're trying to make something creamy, add Greek yogurt. Fresh herbs, your parsley, your cilantro, your basil, your ginger. These are the things that you really want to have fresh. They just don't taste the same dried. Carrots and celery, and eggs. All the things that I typically have in my pantry. And I'm going to pass it on to Maureen.
All right, well, with all that great recommending of pantry items, I can kind of tell you how to best tackle doing your grocery shopping. The first thing, I strongly recommend you find a grocery store that has people that are willing to help you and be helpful and are knowledgeable, because there's lots of great stuff in the store, but sometimes you just can't find it. And once I started working for PCC, I really realized how helpful people could be. Before you go, though, you need to make sure you have your grocery lists written down. Do not go with no list. Make sure you have your Trader Joe's list, your PCC list, your Costco list. Keep those lists going. I keep mine on my phone in a application called Grocery IQ, and my husband can put things on the list from his phone, and I always have a running list. I can even create favorites. So when I go to Costco, I know that there's 10 things I will always buy when I go to Costco, and so on and so forth. Have your list done. That can be done sitting down while you're relaxing, and it'll minimize your time in the store. Also, if you can have your recipes on your phone, that's great too. I've found that that's a real helpful thing, is to have some of the more common recipes that I use on my phone. That way I can access all the ingredients and make sure that I'm getting every last thing, so I don't send my husband out 3 times for the different things that I have forgotten. So use your technology if you have it. Otherwise, use your pencil and paper and get it written down. Grocery stores will frequently sample things out to you. If you're unsure or don't know whether you want to try it, you can ask. We will always sample things out in the deli. We will frequently sample items out that are a little bit different off of the grocery shelf. Ask for help in any way you need it. There are tons of gluten-free items throughout PCC, and one way that we as a grocery store make it particularly easy is when you go through that grocery, no matter where you are, if the little barcoded shelf tag that the item sits on is a pale orange, that is a certified gluten-free item. That is not just one little section in the grocery, it is anywhere from barbecue sauce to cereal. Anything that is a certified gluten-free item is there. And so it's really helpful. So just know your grocery store, know those little tips, and your meat and fish guys, they will custom cut things for you if you ask them. We have tons of grass-fed beef there. They will custom cut fish. They will sharpen your knives that Heather said is so important to have sharpened. They'll do that for free. They'll custom grind meat for you if you want a special grind of meat. The bulk section, like Heather talked about, is invaluable. You have everything from chia seed to flax seed to dried pasta, all the flours that you can imagine, whole grains. You have farro, spelt, teff, amaranth, all sorts of stuff. And you can buy as little or as much as your family uses. I buy a case of mason jars, and I will go in and I'll put my rice and my heavier things in mason jars, and you just have somebody weigh your jar before you go in there so you know how much that weighs so you don't pay for your own jar, and then just fill it with all that stuff. And the spices are terrific. I mean, there has to be over 100 spices, and I love the spice market that Heather talked about, but I also love the fact that I can buy 6 bay leaves and it will cost me about 15 cents. I mean, it's incredible. Her price comparison is so accurate. It's so inexpensive, and you can buy small amounts. And I have filled my drawer by my stove with 48 little glass jars that I can keep my bulk spices in, and it's terrific. A couple of the things that you can do to make dinner really quick is find the things that are ready-made. The rotisserie chicken can become 3 or 4 different meals depending on how many people in your family. There are a variety of shelf-stable, whole grain things. There are little bags of brown rice and quinoa. I can get that actually at Costco now, 6 of them. Shelf-stable brown rice and quinoa, all you do is warm it up. And that will feed 2 to 4 people depending on how much. I mean, you could literally put this brown rice and quinoa on a plate, slice some avocado and whatever you like to put on it, fresh salsa, and you've got a really great lunch. I mean, really great. And we've got plenty of those sorts of things throughout the store. Other easy things to do is make sure, like Heather said, make sure you have your favorite sauces, you know, your Trader Joe enchilada sauce, your green curry sauce that's already ready. Make sure that if you feel like you're not really wanting to chop and prep, a lot of grocery stores have peeled garlic, they have chopped onions, chopped celery, all that stuff is ready and easy to use. You can even go so far as to buy cut fruit. A lot of the delis right now are offering fresh organic cut fruit at PCC, and it's terrific. There's loads of chopped salad greens that are not lettuce. Greens like arugula and spinach, but also you can find chopped kales, cleaned and ready to use. You can use those in a salad, and you can use them, you know, to saute and cook with your meals. There's loads and loads of stuff. So the important thing is to know your grocery store, find a store with helpful staff that can guide you through, and just ask for help when you need it, and come with your list, and buy the foods that are really versatile, that will go from cold to cooked, and, you know, that are easy to prepare. That was most of what I wanted to talk about. I don't know if anybody has any questions about the grocery, but I love that they touched on, you know, all the things about bulk. Yeah?
Yeah, with bulk foods, what are the odds of cross-contamination for those that are
So I wouldn't recommend it for anybody that has a serious allergy, and I tell that to people who come to the deli and want something that's gluten-free. Gluten-free can only be called gluten-free when it's self-contained in its own package. Once it's out of its package and next to anything that isn't gluten-free, there's always a risk, and it's a risk that some people are willing to take because the sensitivity isn't very bad, but there are some who have very serious sensitivities and shouldn't risk that. Specifically in PCC's Deli, we always have turkey meatloaf. We always have grilled chicken breast. We always have a couple other forms of chicken. And then there's almost always salmon available, and then a variety of vegetarian and vegan proteins for those of you that don't want to eat meat. So there's lots of really good options, and I know that at PCC and probably other grocery stores, we actually assemble small dinner boxes that will have some brown rice, some salmon, and a little Emerald City salad, which is our signature kale salad with wild rice and lemon juice. So they'll have things like that that are ready and quick to grab. A variety of different things depending on the store that you're shopping. So there's lots of really great things. I mean, I love our deli. I think it inspires me to cook a lot more interesting and varied foods, just the things that I see come out of there. And I've never worked at any other grocery deli, so I can't speak for that, but I know that we do a really great job of putting some really good food. And it's made right there. You can see the people making your food behind the window, so it's not trucked in from a big commissary kitchens. So that's why I really love our deli. It's just varied, and I think it suits just about every dietary need that you could possibly have.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, cooking and meal preparation tips from two fine chefs. Travis Gleason is widely known as an advocate for people living with multiple sclerosis. His blog, Life with MS, can be found on everydayhealth.com. He is a respected culinary educator trained at the New England Institute of Culinary Science with master's studies in food science at Cornell University. Travis was diagnosed with MS in 2001. Joining Travis is Brian Kelly, who worked as a chef in a variety of settings for 16 years. Brian still very much enjoys cooking, mostly for the benefit of his family and friends. He was diagnosed with MS in 1997. Here are Travis Gleason and Brian Kelly.
Hello and welcome. First, I'd love to thank Virginia Mason and Nurse Piper for putting on this program. It's something that a lot of people have asked for in my communications with folks with MS, so I think this is a great program and it's exciting. Brian and I are here to dispel a couple of rumors about chefs. Number one, that we know what we're doing. And that will come into play when you look at the chicken green chili recipe that I wrote, that you'll notice that there's chicken in the ingredients, but it doesn't say to add chicken in the procedures. So we'll tell you where that happens.
Just to see if you're paying attention.
Also, one of the things that is important for you to know is that we don't let friends get away with saying things that are just too funny not to repeat. So from here on out, I will have as a mantra Heather Nicefora's always smell your fennel. Sniff your fennel. Because that's just too precious a line to let go. Sniff your fennel. So what we're going to talk about today is kind of turning that pantry that Heather and Mo talked about into meals. And in particular, talking about how to conserve energy. That's our energy, because we know that living with MS, we have a finite amount of energy in the checkbook. And if you're working during the day or just trying to make it from the bed to the bathroom, that might be all the energy you have for the day. So we're going to kind of talk about some of the ways that you can cook without practically cooking, and then how to turn one meal into several meals that are very different. All right, and this is just one example. There was a chef in the Pacific Northwest that before there was a Food Network, and he was on PBS, Jeff Smith, the Frugal Gourmet. I was a young Coast Guard navigator in Kodiak, Alaska, and if any of you were ever in Kodiak, Alaska in the 1980s, you'll know that good food was, yes, exactly. So I watched on the Alaska Satellite Television Network, I watched Jeff Smith, the Frugal Gourmet, and it inspired me, and after I got out of the Coast Guard, I went to culinary school. I got a chance to meet Jeff a number of times during that time and since before his passing. But one of his recipes that he had in his book, he called threatened chicken. You don't really cook it, you just threaten it. And that's in your recipe notes as whole poached chicken. And this is a really exciting cooking method because it's fast, it's easy, and you really don't have to do anything, okay? You take the chicken and you put it in a pot and you cover it with cold water and you put it on the stove and you bring it to a boil. And then you turn it off and you put a cover on it and you let it sit there for an hour. And then it's done. So I've tweaked this a little bit so that we can then take that to the next step even and turn that into some stock and things. And we've just like the magic of television, we've pre-poached one of these. But I just want to sort of show you what we're doing here. If you don't have a fancy pot like I've got here with a strainer in it, etc., this is kind of a fun little trick. So what I did is I took some butcher's twine, some kite string or whatever will work just fine, and I take the string and I put it through the cavity of my chicken, and I put my fingers in through its neck cavity, and I pull the loop out, okay? And then I put the chicken through the loop, or the string through the loop like that, and then I just I take this loop and I wrap it around its wings. So basically what I end up with is a chicken that's kind of like this. Okay. And then I like to put it breast down, not that it's that big of a deal, and then let the string sort of hang out a bit. And then I cover it with water by about 2 inches. And what ends up happening there is the water and the chicken come up to a boil at the same time, pretty much. It's like, have you ever been at a campfire and somebody takes a paper cup full of water and sets it in the campfire and it doesn't burn? And it doesn't burn. Maybe it burns around the top, but then the water starts to evaporate and then it burns down with the water level because the water is boiling at 212 degrees and paper burns at Fahrenheit 457. There was a book, Bradbury. Anyway, so what I do is I put this chicken in, I put it on the stove, I bring it up to a boil, and then protein is going to come out of this chicken. And if you buy a brined chicken or a koshered chicken, you might even get a little bit more of that. That foam, that froth, is dissolved protein. Just like when you go to the sea and the waves come in and you see froth and foam, that's dissolved protein, like egg whites beating. Think of it that way. Okay, so I like to skim that off because that sort of clouds up my stock. But then at that point, when the water comes to a boil, I skim the scum and I add my vegetables. This is called a mirepoix, a fancy French word. Onion, celery, and carrots. No big deal. A couple of bay leaves, some peppercorns, and then bring it back up to a boil, which is going to take you, at this point, 3 minutes maybe. The lid goes on, the heat goes off, you just let it sit there. You set a timer for an hour. Go take a nap. When you come back, the chicken's going to look like this. Magic of television. At that point, you're able to let it cool a bit because it's going to be hot, and you can pull apart the chicken. Now, I usually separate the chicken breasts and the chicken thigh meat and the leg meat, etc. And in doing that, you end up with bones and skin. I take those bones and the skin, and I put them back in the pot with the lid off, and I put it on simmer for about an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, something like that, and then I've got chicken stock. And you'll see that this comes apart pretty easily. The breast meat comes off and thighs come apart. But that's all it takes, an hour in there. Now, obviously, you can't put a 16-pound turkey in and do the same kind of thing, okay? This has to be a fairly small bird, so 3-4 pounds tops. And now you've got a whole chicken that we're going to pull out, and we're going to have the chicken meat, white meat and dark meat. We're going to do a couple of different things with that. And then you've got this chicken stock that you can also do things with. So, before Brian takes this white chicken meat and turns it into our first dish, I'd also like to build on Heather and Mo's thoughts of shopping, etc. Shopping can be it for the day for me. It's going to the market and coming home with the food, and that's it. As chefs, we usually have a whole stack of people in our kitchens that'll do stuff for us, prep work, etc., things like that. Some of the little tricks that we've learned and that you'll see in main kitchens is, have somebody peel all the carrots and put them in a bag and put them. Have somebody peel the onions if you're buying whole onions, etc. Wash all your veg the day you get it. Things like that. This is doing the things so that when you have the energy, you can do all of that. Chop some things up, put it in the fridge, etc. I've got containers of chopped carrots and onions and celery and broccoli and all that kind of stuff, because then I can just take it out and throw it on some greens, and I've got a salad. If I'm really spent and I've got 3 minutes worth of energy that I can make into dinner, I put a saute pan on the heat, I turn it on. I reach in and I get a little bit of olive oil, put it in the pan, whip up 3 eggs. Some of my vegetables go into the pan, stir them, let them get soft for a minute. I throw in the eggs, I shake it for 3 or 4 minutes, I dump it out on a plate, I've got an omelet. You put a little salad, greens, and some of these other veg, you're good to go. So there's no reason that you can't make your own dinner if you just plan ahead. And let's face it, we live with MS. That's pretty much what we do all the time, is that we plan ahead. We figure out, if I can't do this, what can I do? So that's the thought here, is sort of plan out your refrigerator like you learned from Heather how to plan out your pantry, and this process will go along very easily. And you'll find that there are a lot of things that you can do, like this threatened chicken. You can roast off a pot roast in your crock pot and then turn it into stew and then turn it into carne asada tacos. You can do a lot of different things with it. So that's sort of our plan. So with the threatened chicken, we're going to turn this now into chicken salad.
Salad. Okay.
And it's Brian.
Thank you all for coming. It's a little warm back here. Well, when I get home from work at, say, 6 o'clock, I'm usually so spent, I just want to take a nap and forget about the night. But you have to go through and make dinner and do things that you typically would have to do. But this is a great starter or even a light dinner. It works really well. I like it. It's filling and everything else. So I will make avocado chicken salad. So what I have here is avocados. I've got the 2 avocados, and hopefully you get ripe avocados. That usually works.
I bought all the food, and I bought him unripe avocados just to test him.
Yes. But you mash
Chefs
it.
do that to each other too.
You mash it with a fork. It mashes down pretty easily. And then you put olive oil, about 2 tablespoons. A little bit of lime juice. Excuse me.
It's funny, when most of us think chicken salad, we think mayonnaise, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We're taking some good fat from an avocado, mixing it with some lime juice, which is the acid, and now instead of an egg and oil and vinegar, which make up mayonnaise, we're making a thick and creamy and tasty dressing without the mayonnaise. Play-by-play and color commentary, that's how we're going to run this thing.
It works. Usually takes so much of my energy just to focus on what I'm doing. So here we've got probably a tablespoon of lime juice, a little bit of cilantro, some salt, and just a little bit of pepper. Mix that up. Then add tomatoes. This is 2 tomatoes, 2 small Roma tomatoes. Some green onion, probably about 3 or 4 stalks. A little bit of cilantro, or did I put that in there already? And then this is just about a pound of diced chicken, or shredded chicken. And then you mix it up. I like to use either sesame seeds or almonds. Sliced almonds go really well with it. Sometimes I use cumin and chili powder, and it make a meal out of tortilla chips and chicken salad, and it's more than satisfying.
That's one of the things about looking at recipes and something like this is, all right, so this is an avocado chicken salad, but you can see that Brian put some variations on the bottom of different things. You could vary this thing so many different ways that your family doesn't realize that they're having chicken salad every Wednesday, and it just, it's the same base, but you vary
exactly.
it. It's fun to, there's some great textures in there, there's some crunch, there's some chew, there's some creaminess. Those are the kinds of things that you want to think about when you're creating meals as well. It's not just flavors, it's textures. And the more you mix up textures, you get some crunch and some chew and some creaminess, those kinds of things. That's satisfying as well, because that's sparking and making your palate interested in what you're eating. So you're thinking about what you're eating, so you eat a little bit less because you're taking more time thinking about it. So it's not just flavors, it's textures that are important too.
Exactly.
All right.
And then this you can put on toast, or like I said, tortilla chips, or just about anything, and it's very satisfying. So.
Can we have a little look at it?
Sure, sure.
It's great for St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Chicken green chili. This can be done with chicken. It can be done as a vegetarian. Use some vegetable stock instead of the chicken stock. Throw a couple of little extra kinds of beans. We're using white beans. If you mix white and black beans in, you'll also know relative to the recipe, I added some corn into this along with the hominy. If you don't like hominy, put the corn. And these are base recipes. Feel free to expand on them. Neither Brian and I will be offended.
Well,
right.
No, I won't.
Brian's easily offended. All right, so into our pot goes a little bit of oil. This is a canola oil. You could use vegetable oil mixture, an olive oil, whatever you want to do. One of the little secrets, make sure that your pan is hot before you add the oil in. There's an old saying, hot pan, cold oil, food won't stick. So get your pan hot, then add your oil, and then add your product that's going in next. So I've got some onions and some bell peppers that I mixed in there. Turn that up a bit. And we'll begin our cooking process. So just like our soup, we want to pull the flavors out of that. So I'm going to put some salt and pepper in that, or a little bit chicken base or vegetable base, whatever you want to be using. And then into that goes some garlic. Typically you want your vegetables to start cooking a bit before you add the garlic, because garlic has higher, more complex sugars and it will burn. So let some moisture start to cook out in your pan and then add the garlic. There's just a couple of cloves of chopped garlic, and I wouldn't be doing you service if we didn't show you a couple of secrets of the trade, right? So I want to show you something about peeling garlic. First off, to break off those little cloves of garlic can be a little bit difficult, particularly if you've got some fine motor skill issues. So you simply put the clove of garlic on your countertop, and with the heel of your hand, you press down and away from the root, and it breaks apart. Now, peeling garlic. Here's a little trick. the root end of the clove. We're simply going to take my knife and peel off that root end. Just cut that bit off right there, okay? That's what's holding all of the paper on. In garlic, that's called paper. So now I'm going to put the clove of garlic down on the counter using the heel of my knife. Just give it a whack. And there's my garlic, peeled. So, there's your trick of the trade. Enough. So now, I've tried to incorporate convenience items in here. When I'm making my world famous green chili, I'm setting up the mesquite charcoal grill at 4 o'clock in the morning and roasting off my own peppers. Back in the old days.
Yeah.
Now, I let the people in Hatch, New Mexico roast my chilies. So here's some Hatch, New Mexico roasted chilies. I'm going to add in there, and that's just a little bit of green chilies. It's starting to get fragrance. Or is that you?
No, somebody.
Then some spices. A little bit of cumin. That's sort of that southwestern smell. Kind of smells a little bit like body odor too, but that's cumin. A little bit of coriander. Now, how many people know what the seed, what plant the seed of coriander comes from? It's cilantro. In fact, in a lot of places in the world, when you hear coriander called for, they're actually calling for cilantro. We're Americans and we decided to name things differently. That's how we work. And I like a little oregano. In fact, anytime I'm making a chili product, even if it's a red chili, I always add a little bit of oregano. A lot of chili powders that you'll get will have oregano in there. It's a nice balance. So a little bit of oregano into anything from the Southwest, New Mexico, etc. So my chili is sweating away here. Now I've got my chicken. On your recipes, after the vegetables, in goes the chicken, which we've poached a couple of days ago. Now, if you do it properly, if you poach your chicken and pull it out and let it cool enough so that you can pick the meat, and then, but as you're picking the meat, make sure you're spreading it around. Don't just pile it up. Spread it around so it cools down to room temperature as you're working with it, and then put it in a container and put it in the fridge. It'll last for 5 to 7 days. Okay? It's important that you don't bundle up all that protein and put it into a container that's plastic, which is an insulator, which is going to keep things warm, and then put it in the fridge, which is made to keep cold food cold, not to get food cold. Your freezer is to keep frozen food frozen, not to get food frozen. Okay? That's important to know. So if you put food that's been cooled down to room temperature in your fridge, it's going to be a lot safer. So in goes our chicken that we did a couple of days ago. And again, with the convenience, I add a little bit of green chili enchilada sauce. I could have made my own and all that, but those days are gone. That's the best part about commercial kitchens too, is somebody's always there to clean up after me. Chicken stock. Heather had mentioned a chicken stock product. You can get frozen stock, etc. I like to use a low sodium chicken stock, and I follow the folks at Cooks Illustrated, which do America's Test Kitchen. Follow their recommendations implicitly because they've got a whole staff of food scientists and tasters and things, and they think that Swanson's organic chicken stock is the best chicken stock that's easily available. So that's what I like to use, is Swanson's chicken stock. So I'm going to add about a quart of this in. Now, it's important to note here that I'm making chili. Okay, this is going to be kind of a soupy sort of chili. What we're going to serve to you is chili the next day or 2 days after that, which is going to be onto a tortilla. So I've taken that chicken stock and some pulled chicken and I've made it into chili, but then I can cook it down a little further and serve it in tortillas as a taco or an enchilada or something. So again, this is multiple uses for the same food products. I'm going to add in hominy and beans and corn. Now, hominy is corn. Hominy is dried corn that's been soaked through a process that goes back to the Anasazi Indians. I like the texture that it adds. I also like if I mix hominy and beans together, I'm completing my protein, so I could do this completely without chicken, and I've got the proteins. The beans I use are white cannelli beans. White cannelli beans are, usually you see those in Italian cooking, but it works really well for a white chili. Just so you can see what they look like, it's a kidney bean, only it's white. Sometimes called cannellini beans, sometimes called white kidney beans, sometimes mispronounced as just about anything. Frozen corn is something I always have in my refrigerator. You can take a can of black beans, a bag of frozen corn, and mix that in with a jar or a container of fresh salsa that you picked up at the market, and boom, you've got an appetizer right there ready to go. So in goes my corn. And that's about it. I'm going to bring this up to a simmer. Everything in here is pretty much cooked. The chicken's cooked. The onions and bell peppers I sweated in the oil, and as it comes to a simmer, they're going to finish cooking, and I'm good to go. Now that's done and ready in 10 or 15 minutes. So it's all in the planning. When you make your shopping list to go shopping, when you fill your pantry with things that you can just pull out at any point. Heather talked about tomato product. Make sure that there's some tomatoes in there, and some of the enchilada sauces and canned beans for the times that soaking beans and cooking beans on your own is just not going to happen. And then it's the flavors are completed with limes and cilantro and scallions. I like to put those on the table so that you dish up and you can put whatever on you want, a squeeze of lime, a little bit of cilantro. Here's an interesting thing about cilantro. Does anyone just hate cilantro? Can't do it? Okay, you'll hear that sometimes. People are like, oh, it tastes terrible. It tastes like ivory soap. You'll hear that sometimes from people. Back in the early 90s when cilantro ended up in all the foods in the world, people were like, oh, it tastes like ivory soap. That's actually an allergic reaction. People who say that cilantro tastes like ivory soap are allergic to it. It's not anaphylaxis and they need to go to the ER, but that's the way that allergy manifests itself. So a little interesting, maybe. So we're going to let that come to a simmer, and as we said, we're going to serve you some food. But before we get into the service part, I want to make sure that we answer questions, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about the foods that we've made here. We'll answer just about any question. We'll start in the front.
Green chilies actually hatch chilies like you buy in the market?
It's yes. They're from Hatch, New Mexico. This is Hatch brand, and they come from Hatch, New Mexico, and they fire roast them and chop them up and can them right down there in New Mexico.
Isn't there a type of chili that's
No.
actually a hatch
No.
chili?
It's used to be called an Anaheim, and then sometimes it's called a New Mexico chili.
Yeah.
It'll be sold as a Hatch chili. America doesn't have a Appellation Contrôlée like the French do, and Origin Contrôlée and all that kind of stuff. But that's it. A Hatch, New Mexico chili is coming from the area around Hatch, New Mexico. It's not a type of chili. It's a location where that chili was grown.
Doesn't food go bad faster when you cut it up, like the vegetables?
Yes, yes. However, if you're shopping on a once or twice a week, it's not going to go bad in that time. But we're trying to conserve energy here as well. And now, I won't go shopping and then come home and peel all my carrots and cut them up and put them in the fridge. That's just not going to happen. But if I feel like I've got a little bit of energy, or I don't have children, world, you're welcome. But if the kids want to learn how to cut up some vegetables, or your spouse, or whatever, those are things that you can do. And if you wash them properly, peel them, etc., and put them in clean, they're going to last almost as long as if they weren't cut up. Now, don't get me wrong, a bell pepper cut up is going to start to weep and that kind of thing. So maybe I do that the day before I'm going to make my chili or whatever. Secret of the restaurant business, we're not peeling garlic to put into your food when you order it. That was done earlier in the morning or the day before. So all of that is part of what's called mise en place. It's a French thing that means things in their place. I've always liked to think of mise en place as not just the food products all cut up and put into bowls and things like that, but it also the knowledge, the knowledge of what your customer, what your family likes to eat, all of those kinds of things. So you have a mise en place in your head. It's just now we're taking that to a more.
Well, how do I get somebody to do all that for me?
Batting your eyes doesn't work for me, but I'm told. I have something to say about that. Anything you want to jump in? Jump in. I don't want to monopolize.
As far as organics, I don't know. I like to pull it from my garden, and if I can't do that, then I typically buy organic or the freshest I can find. I mean,
there are some hot buttons, and I can't remember all of them.
Yeah.
I have MS brain too, but I like anything that is in the soil, like carrots, potatoes in particular, radishes, anything that's underneath the soil. I like to be organic, and any of my tree fruits. Particularly apples are one of the really. Yeah. I won't eat a non-organic apple. Okay.
They got
for the
so much
pesticides
flavor too.
Yeah. So, and again, going back, Cooks Illustrated and the American's Test Kitchen online, they have. I just recently read that sort of hot button list, and also. I write for everydayhealth.com, and I know that just recently on their Facebook page, they had something about these are the ones to eat organic and these are not. So I don't remember all of them, but yes, there are some that I definitely don't. You've had your hand up a couple of times.
Okay, what's the best way to store romaine lettuce in, itself or chopped or something? Or?
Anything that's high in moisture is going to store better in its natural state. I usually, just for convenience sake, I usually buy the little bag that has 3 hearts of romaine in it because I end up tossing out 2 or 3 leaves on the outside anyway, so I let somebody else do that. But if you keep it, if you've got a crisper drawer, that's important because it's made to do that. If your refrigerator is old and tired like mine, what I may do is open up that bag and take a wetted paper towel and stick it in there, and then not seal the bag all the way, let it breathe, because if it's in a completely moist environment, it's going to go bad quickly as well. But chopped up romaine can last 24 hours if handled well.
You spoke about using the skin and the bone, making your broth. And I wonder about the skin. I'm sure because it gives flavor, but it also has a tremendous amount of fat.
Yes, it does. And so one of the things that I do is I like to put it in knowing that I can take it out. See, when I finished making my stock and I strain the stock and I chill it down to room temperature, I put it in a sink full of some cold water or whatever, and then put it in the refrigerator. The fat is lighter than the water, so it's going to float to the top, and then it's going to solidify. Now, if any of you has a good Irish or Jewish grandmother, she's going to tell you to take that schmaltz off the top, and you're going to use that. And I might use that in my soup. But it's easier to take the fat off once it's solidified and chilled. You can discard it if you want, or not. But and I like to use organic chickens or good chicken. I'm one of those guys that'll pay $19 for a chicken, but I'm going to get 4 meals out of it. So the skin doesn't bother me that much, but what I will do is before I put the chicken in, I'll pull some of the, right at the body cavity, you'll see little bits of fat. I'll pull that out because I don't necessarily need any more fat.
Are there any other kind of go-to base recipes like the bread and chicken that you think this is a great thing to kind of make 3 or 4 meals out of?
Yes, and there will be other Caring Kitchen programs that you can sign up for and see online.
Stay tuned.
We put this together on fairly short notice. Piper had this brilliant idea. That's Nurse Piper. She had this brilliant idea, and we ran with it as quickly as we could. So this was one of my go-tos. Just about any product that I cook with, when I write recipes and menus for restaurants as a consultant, 80% of the food that comes in the back door has at least 3 uses. That's one of my rules. Yes, there are going to be some recipes that I need this particular ingredient for, but I try for my kitchen to be 80% crossover uses. And if I'm doing one particular sauce or something like that, it goes back to a classical training. There are mother sauces. You know, there's a tomato sauce and a demi-glace, you know, a brown sauce and a tomato sauce. And from those, you can make hundreds of different sauces. So that's sort of where that comes from. Thanks so very much.
Thanks.